Hi, this is Michael Naziri with the Michael Naziri podcast. I am blessed to be here today with Pastor Zavadil. Hello, Pastor Zavadil.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. I've seen you in the past at ADAU meets. I think correct.
Well, it would have been 100% raw meats.
Oh, you didn't compete in
Yeah.
ADAU.
Nope, haven't competed there.
When did you start powerlifting?
2014.
Oh, 2000. I see. In my head, I remember you back earlier than that.
And now, if have come to Virginia Beach for any of the world championships in the last 6 or 7 years, you saw me there because I helped Paul coordinate and put them together, and was involved with each of them.
I remember, yeah, it was a while ago. I think the first time I saw you. I don't think I was a born again Christian, as people would call it. But I grew up Catholic, and but I was excited that there was a pastor at the meet. I found it really interesting, and
There's a few of us who lift around. As far as I know, I think I'm the only one who lifts in 100% raw, but I know out west, there's a few out in the Midwest that are USPA guys that lift in the USPA and the USA.
If you could, for this podcast in the future, say a prayer for me that I stop saying and like 100 times each podcast, because every time I listen to my podcast, I want to punch myself.
That's a problem even we pastors have. I have to watch myself every Sunday with the ums and some of the other little quirks. My wife has pointed out I have this habit of scratching my head in the midst of talking all the time. And she said, in the middle of your sermon, you go over and you start scratching your head and you just leave it there. So, we all have those little idiosyncrasies, and you can overcome them. You just got to work at it. But I'll pray about that certainly for you.
Thank you. So how did you get into powerlifting?
Well, the story I got to go back to 2007. In 2007, just about 2 months before I turned 45, I went for my annual checkup, and the doctor called me back in a week or so later and said, we got some problems we need to work on here. And my cholesterol was through the roof, and my liver and pancreatic enzymes were all messed up. And so she said, let's address cholesterol first. And she said, I'm going to give you till after the first of the year, so about 12 weeks, to try to lose some weight. I was at my heaviest at that point, a little over 235, which I was skinny fat.
That's
I'm 6 foot tall, and I didn't think I looked fat, but when I graduated college, I barely broke 150. So I'd put on a considerable amount of weight between college and in that point. So I began a journey at that point, just trying to get my life in order, and began changing the way I read some books. The one that influenced me the most was the TNT workout or plan that was put out by Men's Health at that time, with Alwyn Cosgrove and Adam Campbell. Real good. Had workouts, it had meal plans, it had everything I needed. And so I set about it and lost 35, 40 pounds, almost 50 pounds in those 12 weeks, probably faster than I should have. But I had a goal in mind. Got my cholesterol down, but spent the next year and a half or so dealing with the liver enzymes, pancreatic enzymes. Turns out I have an extra duct in my pancreas, and so I'm always leaking a little bit of pancreatic enzymes. And then I was finally diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver, based upon probably because of the way I had been eating.
Yeah.
And so I began changing my own lifestyle. Then I began noticing, as a pastor, we would have regular fellowship dinners. And I also, as a pastor, spent a lot of time visiting hospitals and began making this connection between obesity related illnesses that were taking me to the hospital. And every time I saw our people eating, we had a huge table with desserts, an almost equally large table with lots of casseroles with noodles and rice, and a very small portion that had anything green or vegetables of any kind. I had to fight with some of our folks to even get them to add a green salad to the meals that were prepared for us. And so I began changing things first in the church. On a Wednesday night, we had a Wednesday night supper that was prepared for us, and then we had our Bible study. I required then our cooks to include a vegetable of some kind. I gave them two choices. They could have a white or yellow, but they also had to have a green, and they had to have a tossed salad. Trying to clean up the things a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the powerlifting. So 2010, after I had been on this journey for my first 2 years, in the course of that, I had started, I'd been given some dumbbells and a weight bench by my kids for Christmas, and I'd started weight training. I had purchased my first rack from Craigslist and had started to accumulate some weights and started to actually lift with a barbell, and then was diagnosed with a hernia. And so it was wrapping around my intestines, so I had to have surgery, and that put me on the shelf for a few weeks. But then I got into weightlifting, and I really liked it. And it was just, I was doing full body, just basic training. Wasn't powerlifting or anything at that time. As I was making all these connections at the church, I said, churches do a lot of good things for people, but I've never heard of a church that dealt with the physical fitness of the people. And so I began Get Fit for the King Ministries, which was a ministry to primarily seniors, a fitness ministry. And we began in our fellowship hall with I joke about it because we began with some 5-pound dumbbells, 2 bands, and a Swiss ball.
Wait, email that to me later.
Okay.
For that, and just say it again for people. That sounds really good.
The Get Fit for the King Ministries.
Is there a website for that?
We have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook page, and
yeah, that's great.
It was a ministry that started out primarily for our church folks. We started in our fellowship hall, then we began having gym equipment donated to us. And I began finding more little pieces here and on Craigslist. One of the great things about living in Hampton Roads, which is the world's largest military community, is that prior to COVID, you could find equipment fairly cheap because the military families pay by the pound when they got to move. And so it's usually a whole lot easier just to sell it and buy new than it is to try to move it. Yeah. And so I ended up outfitting a gym at the church with cardio equipment, weight equipment, had a gym going out of business that donated a bunch of stuff to us. And we have a full gym up there, and that began our fitness ministry. 2014, I was heading over to the church one day, and in between my house and the church, we have a grass lot, and some neighborhood kids were out playing football out in the lot. And one of the boys was in the band with my 2 kids at the time. And he was a small, scrawny little guy. And we got talking, and they were saying, yeah, we're training. ODU, Old Dominion University, had just started their football program back. And they were all juniors, seniors, and they were hoping they could either get a scholarship or walk on at Old Dominion and play football. And so I said, well, are y'all doing any kind of strength training? And they said, well, no. I said, well, come with me. And I took them over to the church, and I showed them the gym. And I said, if you'll bring your parents back here on Thursday, I've got an idea where I can help you guys get stronger and get prepared for football. And so they came back that next Thursday, and we began training. The actual kid that I was targeting, the one I knew, made it about 2 or 3 weeks, and it got to be too much for him. But the others stuck with it
Did you
and
make
became the foundation for. They were all very competitive, and so I realized I need to channel this. This will be a whole lot easier if we have a goal. And so I began doing some investigating, found 100% raw,
yeah.
and said, why don't we all train together to do a powerlifting meet? And so that began our powerlifting journey there.
Yeah.
I took one, two, three, four guys and a young lady to our first meet in Currituck, North Carolina. None of us had any equipment. We borrowed it from the Currituck High School wrestling team. They were changing into singlets in the hallway, and did our first meet. And then by the end of that first year, by the end of 2015, I guess, every one of them had set at least one Virginia state record. We went to the Worlds, had that year, may have been 14, I think it was 15 was when we went to the first Worlds. And a couple of them set world records for their age and weight class. We had one classic competition where one of the Currituck boys and one of my boys were back and forth through the whole thing, and it came down to the deadlift, and the other boy won by 1 pound. But it was great. Everybody was excited because, for every lift one kid made, the other kid made the same lift, and it was back and forth. My guy Devin at first won the squat, then their guy won the bench press, and then we got to the deadlift, and like I said, it was exciting and back and forth. So that's kind of how I got into it. I got into it more trying to help folks and coach them than actually for myself, and then I got hooked.
Well, do you like, what's more fun, coaching or lifting?
I go through phases. Right now, I'm in a coaching phase, and it's hard with COVID. I can't at the church gym. We're treating it just like a regular gym, and so I have to limit how many folks can be in there.
All right, let's pretend that no one's listening. All right, everyone's in there training, right?
Right. So my seniors get priority because it's the church gym, so the church folks get the priority. So that they're there. But I like the coaching, the aspect. I'm 57 years old now, and the training for the meets I'm finding gets harder and harder. I'm still training, but because of the current group I'm working with, I'm more overall strength training than powerlifting meet training. The meets have been kind of limited around here too.
Yeah.
Virginia is one of the more, kind of like your area, it's one of the more regulated areas under all this, and they're in fact, there's a meet coming up in March or April. It's the first meet I think we will have had in the area since all of this started.
Yeah, June 13th, I'm going to a meet in New Jersey that Ed Kooten is putting on.
Okay. Yeah.
You know Ed?
Yeah. The Kootens are some of my favorite folks in 100% Raw. They're neat folks. I enjoyed your discussion with them.
Oh, you watched that one? Yeah.
Yes.
I liked having all three of them on. It was fun.
Yeah.
Do you compete in the Strix Girl?
I do not. I actually have been thinking about doing that possibly this year.
It's fun. Because I've heard actually recently powerlifters in other organizations on podcasts talking about how they really need to work their biceps. They don't like that their biceps aren't, getting bigger like their pecs and their legs are. And it's a good way as a powerlifter to just focus on that muscle. And it's fun because it's usually like I should like the night before the meet, you have the strict curl. It's fun. It's not as stressful as a regular meet. You know, the regular meet, the squat comes up right up front, and it's the hardest lift. Very
Right.
stressful. The strict curl, in my opinion, is not like that. I find it very fun.
I judged the American Challenge down in North Carolina for Paul a couple years ago, about 2 years ago, I guess, and judged the strict curl for the first time. And yeah, I mean, it looks fun.
Yeah.
My one of the seniors I work with is in her weight class, the over 60 world record holder in curl, and she loves it. Uh, and yeah, I need to bite the bullet and get in there, Sue, myself.
Yeah. My wife hates it. Well, it's not that she hates the lift, it's that she has a problem with bicep tendonitis, so she just stays away from it.
Yeah.
I haven't had that problem.
Yeah, it all depends on that grip. I have some golfer's elbow, and I have to, if I get too narrow a grip or the pinky high grip, it tends to aggravate it a little bit.
I go with the outside grip. I know a lot of the lift big curlers, they choose the inside grip, but I've tried the inside grip. I curl less with it, so I go outside. So being a pastor, I know from pastors I know is extremely busy. You know, like I'm sure just scheduling in this podcast for you had to be, you had to really get it scheduled in because there's things to do. Powerlifting takes up some time, and coaching takes up some time. How do you fit it in?
Well, our congregation's been great because it's been a ministry of the church. That helps. It's a ministry function. I've cut back again because of COVID. We were having to go 3 or 4 at a time into the gym, and I just told them, I can't do that. 2 or 3 hours a day would be too much. In the past, last year, what I was doing was we had a set time for Get Fit for the King, which was an hour Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning. And that was the seniors. And then my teenagers that I worked with, I would work out with them. So my workout then would be in the afternoon with them. I worked with them because of their schedule. I only met with them twice a week, but then I would usually on Saturday make up Saturday or Sunday. Usually Saturday, would make up my other workout on my own there so that it balances. I also, in my ministry, I've operated from, I call it a ministry of the thirds, and I break the day up into thirds of the day. And so if I've got meetings in the evening and afternoon, I take the mornings to do personal stuff or do weightlifting or whatnot. If I'm heavy in the mornings and midday, I've got the evenings. If I'm heavy mornings and evenings, I've got the midday. And so I'm able to work it, but as I mentioned to you in a text, I'm a schedule guy. And so I just have to sit down and write it all out and see it. And I can make it work. It's just a matter of planning my time because I learned a long time ago, if you don't plan your time, somebody else is going to plan it for you. And so that's my secret is I just have to sit down and map it all out and plan it out. And I've been able to make it work. I've been at it now since 2010. So
How has faith gotten you through the hardest times of your life?
oh, goodness gracious. That's a podcast all in its own.
Well, we can go. Well, let's maybe one of your toughest moments. You don't have to go through every moment, but a tough moment in your life. And explain how I guess explain your faith a little bit and how it helped you pull through like a rough moment in your life.
Well, sometimes it's not always rough. We're blessed in our country in that we're not dealing with some of the painful persecution and things that you see, for instance, for Christians in the Sudan. or in other areas of the world. I know, well, I'll just share a little bit about how I got called into the ministry. In 1984, I went to Peru as a summer missionary with the campus ministry I was involved with. And while I was there, we were in this village, and they shared with us of another village a day's walk away from them that had never heard the gospel. And they didn't know what to do or how to do or whatnot. And that just touched me. And I really wanted to be that person. So I went back to college and was focused on going into the mission field. I met my wife shortly after college, and we ended up getting married the following year, and then children happened the following year, and things changed. So in 1988, I was called to a small church in South Alabama to be a youth director. And I was there for about 9 months, and the pastor left. And after about 6 months of hunting, the search committee and the elders came to me and said, listen, we love you and we want to take care of you and your family, but our package is so far below what we should be offering to a pastor. We're going to have to redo things. And one of the things we're going to have to redo is eliminate your position so that we can afford to pay a new pastor. So they gave me about 6 months to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And I had been trying to figure out how I could I felt called to seminary, was planning to go to seminary, and then we were going to go to the mission field. But I also had one child at that point, had another baby on the way, and was trying to figure out how do I do this? Financially, how could I do that? So we began praying about it and trying to figure out what the Lord wants us to do. I had interviewed with a church in Meridian, Mississippi, and had gotten a phone call from the dean of students at Reformed Theological Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and had organized both of those interviews the same weekend so that I wouldn't have to do a lot of traveling, and went and did those. They went great. I enjoyed them and felt, this would be great. I could go there. Meridian was an hour and a half or so from Jackson. I could go there and then take classes part-time and be a youth director and be able to kill two birds with one stone. And then we went like 2 months where I heard absolutely nothing. And I was getting, now it's like April, and May 1 was supposed to be my last day as a youth pastor. And I'm thinking, I don't have much time. What am I going to do? And we were just praying about it and wrestling with it. And my wife finally said, David, if you could do anything right now, what would you want to do? And I said, I really would just like to go to school and get it taken care of. So just go full time. And it was like at that moment, this weight was lifted. And literally within the next day or two, I got a letter from the church in Meridian saying they were going to call somebody else and that they weren't going to call me. And I got a phone call from the dean of students at the seminary saying, David, we've got housing for you. If you can get here by May 1st, we've got a place for you. You can start in the summer term, and we've got everything worked out for you. And we knew that's what the Lord wanted us to do at that point, was to go there. And we went to seminary. And again, we're with the intentions of going eventually.
Seminary, you and your wife?
Well, she took a couple classes, but I did the bulk of the study and went full time and got my Master of Divinity with an emphasis in missions. Our goal was to go to the mission field. We did.
Can I jump in and ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
I know this is mostly like a lifting podcast, but sorry everybody, like this is turning into a Christian podcast. You have to deal with that. So in my church, I volunteer but like just a big church. So I have like a greet team to help people into the church and parking and kids ministry at night and uh, there's Bible studies and stuff like that. But I was a little disappointed when I emailed basically the head pastor. He's not the head teaching pastor, but he's like the oldest pastor. He's really knowledgeable guy. I emailed him. I said, I'm volunteering, I'm doing this stuff, but like I don't feel I have this calling. Like I feel like I need to be spreading the gospel, and I'm not doing it. I mean, like you guys are telling me that I'm doing it by doing this stuff. Like I'm like basically a tool in the machine, but like I don't really feel like it, and you didn't really have anything for me. What do you have for me? What would you say?
Well, when we evangelize, share the gospel, spread the gospel, we do it in two ways. I mean, there's the verbal audio presentation. We are told to go and preach the gospel. But in the Great Commission of Matthew 28, 18 through 20, when Jesus says to the disciples, "Go therefore," that phrase there is when translated from the Greek. In the Greek, is more accurately translated as you were going about, or as you were going through your day, were to proclaim the gospel. But if you look at the whole of that commission, there's more than just the proclaiming of the gospel.
I have to learn how to do that.
Yeah, we're to teach them to observe all that the Lord has commanded us, and teaching sometimes, just like in coaching, is sometimes more caught than taught. And so our lifestyle also is evangelistic, is sharing of the faith. When I was in Peru, my first time, I was in Peru in '84 and Colombia in '85 for 3 months each time. And I got frustrated at times because I felt like you were feeling, that we were doing a lot of things, but we really weren't preaching the gospel. And, and one of the missionaries came to me and he said, "Listen, you can't give them the bread of life until you've given them some bread for life." And basically what he was saying is, that other age-old proverb or saying that we've all heard, they don't really care what you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Similar concept. It's hard to talk to somebody about the bread of life, Jesus Christ, if they're hungry and starving and you have nothing to give to them. And in our setting, we don't deal with that as much because we're a prosperous country. But for instance, with Get Fit for the King, I started in 2010. In 2012, a local Shackley group started meeting in the fellowship hall. One of our elders sells Shackley, and they wanted to meet. And they started it was when The Biggest Loser was the big show on television.
Yeah.
And so they started their own Biggest Loser. And I offered to train anybody who wanted to work with us for their Biggest Loser contest. Well, 3 years in a row, the winner of their contest trained in our gym with our Get Fit for the King ministry. And they ended up stopping the contest because the people that were working with me were winning all the time, and the others weren't. But what it did was it allowed our ministry to go from just being church folks to now we've got non-church folks coming in, and they're seeing us doing the same things, acting the same way, lifting the same weights, doing all that. And it's amazing. It's amazing the conversations you can get to in a gym if you allow them to happen naturally. And we found we were doing more evangelism in the weight room than we were doing outside of the church. And the opportunities are there, even though to date, I've still have 3 or 4 of those folks who've stuck with us now for 10 years. I'm considered their pastor. We're considered their church. When they have when husbands die, they call me. When they're wrestling through issues, they call me, and it's given me opportunities to minister in ways I never would have been able to before. And I would just submit for you too, just that being involved in the lives of the folks that you're involved with will give you opportunities to minister in ways you wouldn't have had otherwise. Yeah, and I encourage you to think about maybe offering one or two folks you think who would be interested to work out with you and train with you a little bit, and you'd be surprised the doors that open up that way.
When we were at a church called Valley Bible, we had started a team there. It really would. Well, the church didn't want to pay for the insurance and everything, so we just basically, it was just our thing and it was in our house, And we had a couple teens, but they grew up and they're gone. I mean, they went to college and they're in their careers now. But there's a couple women that were from that church that still left with my wife. The problem I find with men is that they don't want to take any advice, especially from I mean, I've been involved in powerlifting since 2001. I mean, I'm not the biggest guy, but I do. I have picked some stuff up in 18 years, and I have people that have zero experience, and I see that they'll be benching the same thing the whole lives, just every week, and they don't want to take any advice. Like, how about you? We get a periodized cycle, and we'll build you up to like a little bit higher of a bench, and and nobody wants down. I find that the guys that the egos are too big to listen. Maybe if you're a pastor, maybe you have more sway over people. I think, I don't know.
I've found some of the same thing. The teens will listen to me a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think you asked the question of Ed Cooten when you were at talking to him, who's easier to coach, the girls or the guys. I've coached girls soccer and guys soccer competitively, and have said since day one I would prefer to coach girls than guys for those very reasons that you express. Even at the middle school and high school levels with soccer players, anyways, they by that point they feel they know everything, and the girls are more open. And in the gym, there's some hardships with coaching females, and you've got to be really careful in how you coach them. I can be I don't want this misinterpreted. I can be more physical in coaching the guys than you can with the girls, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a 18-year-old kid, he's getting ready to squat. You can,
Yeah, I can. It's easy to adjust them, show them where the back needs to be straight.
Right.
Hip angle, all of that. Girls, it's a little tougher to do. So
makes sense. So you have to, I guess, be more verbal.
Yes. Yeah. But the girls typically, they take the advice, the instruction a little better than the guys do.
Yeah.
Unless they're a total newbie in the gym, most of the guys, they don't want that. The nice thing about the groups that I've worked with is they've two things, and this is not a knock on commercial gyms, but none of them have ever been to or desire to go to commercial gyms. So they haven't been influenced by what everybody else is doing.
Right.
So that helps make them more teachable. And two, everybody I've trained with or trained has been brand new at lifting. So we were starting on, you mentioned you started with the bar on your squat, and I start everybody with goblet squats, and they don't touch the bar for the first 6 to 8 weeks. we're just working on basic form and then moving up.
Yep.
And
Has a woman, actually, I put on Facebook, I was like, hey, listen, anybody in the area, you want to lift? I was like, it's like, come to my basement. It's open. And uh, of course, no guy said anything. And a woman said she wanted to come. And, but like, basically, like with so she goes straight to like my wife, my wife is going to coaches her, you know, and she's, I don't know what her age. I don't want to talk about her age or weight. She's a woman, but she has a real hard time with flexibility right now. And so what I've done is with the it's like the catches on that squat rack.
mhm,
Put uh, 2 pieces of plywood across, basically like a really high box squat. For her to just get down to onto that pitch because she's not comfortable at all squatting. But that's it. But we do have her doing the the lunges. But yeah, I figured each week we'd have her. Well, I think it was my wife's idea to, and then just to keep lowering the catch with the, until she keeps getting down, the more
right,
flexibility and the strength and stuff.
right. It's a mixed bag. Most of the folks I work with are senior citizens. I've got two or three that like powerlifting and will join me there. Most of the rest is more for fitness. But we try to get everybody involved with the barbell at some point, but we use some machines, we use dumbbells and whatnot, but that flexibility, mobility, particularly for seniors, is huge. And so we do a lot of mobility work, ankle flexion, that kind of stuff, because some of them, I use that picture. You may not remember Tim Conway.
No.
Tim Conway was a comedian back in the 70s, passed away a couple years ago, but he had a character called Flash, which was this old man. His name was Flash, but he moved really slow and he talked really slow. And that's what made it so hilarious, because the skit might be 10 minutes and it might take him 10 minutes to get the one sentence out, type of thing. But he would shuffle his feet like this as he's going across the floor. And I tell folks, I don't want to be that. And I don't want you to be that. When you get old, I don't want you to be that person that's trying to cross the street and you've tied up traffic for half an hour just getting across. So let's work on these things. And so we said, excuse me, the mailman must be on the block. But we set 2 goals. One is for them to be able to get out of a chair without using their hands. And 2, for them to be able to pass the balance test that their doctors will give them for their annual exam.
Yeah.
And for a lot of seniors, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I can share a quick story if it's all right. I've got one lady who's 88 years old who comes up for the King, and she was in for an exam about a year ago. And of course, the PA came in, had her lay down on the table and whatnot, and did her exam and whatnot. And she said, "Okay, you can sit up now." And Martha just sat right up. No help, didn't ask for any help or all. And the PA looked at her kind of weird. She said, "Lay back down a second." So she lay back down. She said, "Get back up." And she sat right back up. She said, "Lay back down a second." And she made her do this 3 or 4 times because she could not believe that this 88-year-old woman could get herself up without any help, without using her hands or anything, could just sit up. And Martha said that it was at that point she really saw and experienced the benefit of the training we had been doing.
It's great.
For the whole body. And tying it into powerlifting, one of the things we as powerlifters tend not to do well is mobility training.
Oh, well, that's me. My wife she's the queen of mobility. She does tons of, she calls it dynamic stretching and regular stretching, and I just can't be bothered with it.
I'm not as good at it as I should, but the one area I've really focused on is my ankle flexion.
Yeah.
And my ankle mobility, because that affects my 2 favorite lifts are the squat and the deadlift, and tight ankles affects both of those negatively.
Yeah.
And so I really spent a lot of time working on my ankle flexibility to help both my squat and my deadlift.
How would you describe your training method? Do you train like like with the period, like almost everyone does train with like periodization, like up and down, or how would you describe it?
I've tried virtually everything out there. um, I I think I enjoyed the most Brian Carroll's 10-20 life, which is a periodization type of a training, but it's done in phases or microcycles,
Yeah.
and uh, it's a percentage-based program. I've found myself moving away from those uh, because I'm finding, at least with the folks I've been working on, that the numbers stress them. and,
Well,
and
I think I think every person at every age of their life needs something a little different.
yeah,
See, I don't think anyone could go around and say this is the best.
right, right. So
Like
we,
find your way.
yeah, lately I've been using more of an RPE and rep goal type of a
Yeah.
system as far as progress goes. If I, uh, have, and I found this works great. I've discovered with, for instance, the teenagers I'm working with now they're not power lifters. They don't want to be. They just want a beach body, and we were doing some percentage based training, where each week they were adding weight and making the progressions, and it just started. A couple of them it just freaked them out mentally, and they just couldn't get past. They would see the percentage or the number that they were supposed to, and they just, no way I can do that. And I, you know come on, you're overthinking this.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't ask you to do anything I didn't think you can do. But it didn't get it. So then we moved to a more of a field-based, but rep goals type of a thing where, we're not going to add weight until you reach a certain number of reps per the exercise, and then we'll add some weight each time. And for them, that took the stress of competing with the numbers. Now they're competing with themselves,
I think you
with
need
themselves.
some pre-workout pneumonia.
Yeah.
That'll get them in.
I haven't tried the ammonia yet, but yeah.
Oh well, well. In case anyone else was wondering, why is this crazy person in a singlet talking on the computer? Because I just threw my deadlift down and then real quick had to get on the computer with you, and I had my singlet on because it was my last deadlift of my cycle. Like it was, I'm pretty sure I did 10 pounds heavier than this years ago. Not 100% sure, but I'm basically at like 100%. But when I did that, it was like a long time ago. So anyway, it was like a big deal to me in my head. I took way too much pre-workout, and oh, this was a double ammonia capsule deadlift. But for the power lifters out there, they know it was a big deal, and that's why I want I'm shaking and rocking a little bit still now. Or more like
Well, I'll talk faster if I need to help you out.
Oh, so you said you were involved in soccer. Any other sports involved in?
Uh, when my kids were younger, I coached baseball also, and I mean, I've always been a coach. Most recently, I coached middle school soccer for a private school here, and that then trying to coach that 5 days a week and do my training, my own personal training, because I was competing. I was training for a couple meets at that point, and I was doing the Get Fit for the King training. It just got to be too much, and so I let the soccer go and focused on what I can do best. Between the two gyms, my garage, the doghouse you see behind me, and then the church gym. I've got plenty to keep me busy in addition to the ministry. Yeah,
That's illegal. You can't have two gyms.
yeah, yeah. I've got my own. own gym in the house. And right now, again, because of the limitations they've put on businesses and whatnot, I work out in the garage, and then the Get Fit for the King folks are meeting over. They meet over there, and then a baseball team uses the gym. One of my elders is a certified trainer also, and so he coaches a baseball team over there 3 days a week, and so it gets a lot of use. Both of them get a lot of use.
What are your views on steroids?
I'm not a steroid advocate. I do have to say I am on TRT but mine's medically handled. My physically I had, it turns out my fatty liver and my prostate issues, both of which I've had since the 40s, can both be tied to low testosterone.
Yeah, you don't have to explain that away. That's fine.
Yeah, but as far as for usage for an advantage, I don't. That's one reason I lift in the 100% raw.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to encourage that, and I don't want to put the folks I'm helping with into a situation where they could be encouraged in that way. I mean, there is a local gym that's kind of known as the steroid gym.
Yeah.
Right nearby, and I kind of I don't encourage my folks to go check them out because I just don't want them to get into that environment.
If gyms like that, it frustrates me when the kids see people coming out of there or lifting there. They think that that's how big they should be, and when they don't like immediately see those types of gains, they get discouraged.
Yeah.
It scares girls away from the sport. I think they see some of the girls that look like guys, and they think that they're gonna look like that. So yeah, it pisses me off a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's dangerous, and at least for the groups, the folks I've worked with, it hasn't really ever come up other than the therapeutic usage for the women. Dealing with most of them are menopausal or postmenopausal, so there's questions about estrogen usually with them. And then for the older guys, the younger, we don't even bring it up. We don't even talk about it if we don't have to with the teenagers, because they've got so many other influences. And since I just try to steer them away from those places where they would get influenced in that direction, and 100% raw has been great for that, because there's
are an influence for it. Because when I was in high school, all the kids on the football team were on steroids.
Right.
This was, I was in high school in the late 90s. I'm sure it's got to be a thing now.
Right.
But yeah, I would talk to them about it. Do you lift in pounds or kilos?
I'm a pounds guy that struggles to convert to kilos.
Just an average American. I like it.
Yeah.
I hate people in America that lift in kilos and put their body weight in kilos.
But a funny story, my first bad experience with kilos was at the first World Championships we took our team, we went to. The young lady on our team was up to squat, and I had put down all of her weights in pounds, not in kilos, on her forearms when I turned them into Paul. And so she went to the bar, and I put down, she was supposed to squat 135 pounds. Well, of course, it read 135. They put 135 kilos on there. and this poor girl, she's 15 years old, weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. Oh. And she got the bar off the rack, walked it out. She actually walked it out and started her squat. And just as she got into the hole, it just doubled her over, bent her over onto the floor. Scared the bejeebies out of me and everybody else there, because first off, she was in world record territory for her first ever competitive lift. Yeah. At that point. Actually, she was probably in double world record territory at that point for somebody her body weight and age. I I realized what I had done and had to go to the judges and then to Paul Bossy, the president, and say, listen, that was on me entirely. I put her number down in pounds. She was only supposed to do what, 60 kilos or something like that. It wasn't supposed to be 135 kilos. Can you please allow her to rest up first off, because we nearly broke her back. Allow her to rest and then start this all over again. And they did. They granted her permission to redo the lift. And if I remember right, she ended up after that point going 9 for 9 on the day and doing a great job. But, dumb coach had to go and change all the numbers because he had put everything down in pounds. And
yeah, so we have on our clipboard the kilo, just take kilo chart taped to the back always, because just in case. Usually when we go into the meet, our first and second attempts are known, and then like the third is like a range based on if you got that second attempt. Raw or equipped? Well, you're lifting in. Well, the funny thing is, people keep asking me, what organization do I lift in? And I tell them 100% raw. And they're like, no, I know you lift raw 100. They're like, I know you lift 100% raw, but what organization do you lift in?
Right.
I lived in a. It's like it's becoming like a joke because everybody.
Who's on first?
Yeah, twice. Yeah, like no, the actual name is 100% raw. I know that's where I've seen you lift. Have you lifted equipped elsewhere?
I've not lifted equipped. I've lifted in a couple USPA meets where, of course, there were equipped lifters lifting there. But
your dog lifts equipped, I think.
Yeah, he doesn't like that question. I'm raw. Since they allowed sleeves, I make use of the allowances.
Yeah.
Actually, I was the one that got them to add Eleiko to the list of approved sleeves and 100% raw because I had Eleiko sleeves, and I said, listen, you just switched over to all Eleiko equipment, and yet you're not allowing us to use Eleiko sleeves. That doesn't make any sense if they're your sponsor. And Paul allowed me to at that meet, and then I noticed the rules chairman the next time the rules came out had changed and added Eleiko to the approved sleeves.
Yeah, well, it's not every meet though.
Yeah.
Because was Al Siegel, Jay Siegel, his meets that he continues his follow this meet, the Coal Country Classic in Bigler, Pennsylvania, right around Christmas. Yeah, he did. You can't wear knee sleeves in that meet.
Yeah.
I guess the meet director has the ability to leave it out, and Al would have never wanted it, so he just keeps it that way. But
I've done more meets without them than I've done with them.
Yeah.
And and for me, it's just more feeling better up here about my joint than anything else. I usually actually even here, I put them on my shins and pull them up when I need them, and I forget that I even have them on most of the time and don't even pull them up, and so I end up not using them most of the time.
I could see it. I call it the Superman effect. Like certain things that like you put on, like wraps or the knee sleeves or the belt. Well, no, the belt is useful, but like just certain things that you have on your body that like you're used to lifting with. If you go to the competition and it's not there, you feel off. Like something you wear like a headband. If you always wear a headband for your heavy squat, and then you go for your third attempt squat and that headband's not on your head, like you're not going to feel right.
Right. I agree. And I mean, that's partly why I even was, because I'm that way with my belt on heavy squat. And so I put my belt on early, but I keep it as loose as possible until that heavy squat. But it's more mental than anything else, because it's part of my wardrobe. It's part of what I wear. And like you, I'm conscious of that. I don't like to wear it when I bench, so I don't, I take it off. I change shoes to bench press. I'm a horrible bencher, so I use everything I can to help me. So I put my training shoes with some heels on them to get my feet up just a little bit on, and
my wife convinced me to wear my well, she convinced me to buy these squat shoes that I think they're called Viking,
mm-hmm.
something like that. They have a really big heel. I think like the biggest production heel, but she convinced me to use them on the bench, and I was like, oh, it makes your arch feel like continuous. At least to me, I like the heel now. Yeah, I think it was good advice.
I'm too old. I start cracking when I try to arch.
Most girls just are naturally able to do it well. And most guys aren't. Most guys have like a very stiff back, but you know what? It benefits them, I think, in the squat and the deadlift. I had a huge bench arch in my back before any guy was doing it really. Like guys were trying to puff their chest up, but guys would always come up to me and be like, "Wow, you have a huge arch in your bench." It didn't really help my bench that well. Not like I benched that much, but but some guys are more flexible that way. But for me, I think the drawback is that flexibility hurts me a lot in the deadlift and the squat. I've gotten a lot better now, but like my back collapses up here. It's very hard for me to hold my upper back tight.
Yeah, I've noticed you tend to good morning the bottom of your squat.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a core that could be addressed. Of course, that's a core strength issue. So
I think it's just core strength. I think it's a lack of quad strength too. Because I mean, my wife can do basically. I think she does more than me with like these dumbbell lunges, and she does them with a back foot up on a plate, and I can't do it. And then actually, one leg, I'm so much stronger than the other. I have to fix that. So I definitely have a weakness there. Pete Miller?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know him right off.
He's been lifting since, I don't know, 1850. He's like, forever. He was an Olympic lifter. He's in the York Hall of Fame. He's a great lifter. And if anyone wants advice, just contact him on Instagram. He'll give anyone advice. And his advice to me is he's like definitely like quad strength issue. You're just transferring like all that weight to your back. And like for years I always thought it was like a lack of back strength, but like I could do good mornings with what I could squat. I don't think that's not the problem. But I can barely do anything with the dumbbell lunges. The legs aren't there. The back is there. That's how I pick my deadlift up. I pick 4 plates up with basically I straight leg deadlifted.
You conventional or sumo?
I would call it a modified sumo. It's like my legs are like on the knurling. It's not very wide.
Okay. Like
my wife is 5'2", and she's way out further than me. So it's not a very basically. I've found that like in conventional, I'm extremely over the bar, and I mean it's really, really horrible. If I go out really wide, I don't have the legs to pick any weight up. If I get down in a decent form. So like in this modified position, like it still looks bad, but I'm moving weight. So I'm gonna just stick with this and work on. What I'm gonna do is do more volume with lighter weight with a solid form, but like not continue with lifting heavy. He doesn't like my bad form, and he likes it.
He's trying to scare away the mailman, I'm guessing.
All right. I know you're a pastor, but you're a power lifter. These aren't bad things. They happen to normal people, especially power lifters when they're lifting. Lifters, they poop themselves, they pee themselves, they
And
vomit, their eyes bleed, their nose bleeds, right? I know one of these things have had to have happened to you.
actually, I'm with Ari on this one. You should go before you get in the gym.
I listened to him today and I didn't poop myself, so it's good.
Yeah. I have not. I've come close to puking a couple times. I do have some hemorrhoid issues, but I have not done either. Though I remember my first time working at the Worlds. I remember I was working back, helping people come out as they were. I can't remember what it's called, but I was the guy that would tell them, okay, you're next, you're in the hole and whatnot. And I remember was the women were doing deadlift. Almost every one of them coming back in and saying, I just peed all over myself, or I just pooped all over myself. And I thought that was strange because that had never happened to me.
Generally, I don't know what the science is behind it, but generally the girls have a very hard time with peeing. Their bladders go.
Having I've had some women. Actually, I've had 3 women who joined Get Fit for the King, who all were part of a club of families that had twins, and every one of them had weak pelvic floor issues.
Yeah.
And that was their big fear. Anytime I even mentioned the barbell, they envisioned that happening before they even got under the barbell. So I mean, it is something that women have to deal with more than guys have to deal with.
Yeah, I remember the first time it happened to my wife in college. Like she racked her squat and it was just a puddle on the floor. But it happens.
I'm not seeing that again with guys. I've not seen that. What I've seen with guys, more than anything, is passing out.
Yeah.
And I've come close to that a couple times. And then the bicep tears, where, like you had talked about earlier, they hadn't done the bicep work and they don't realize how much that alternating grip on the deadlift affects the underhand's bicep. And I've seen a couple of those pop in competitions, and it hurts just to see it happen.
Well, I think it was in Virginia where I passed out on my third attempt deadlift. You were probably there. Oh, yeah, I got it was my third attempt deadlift. I think it was 415 or something like that, and I was so close. I was so close. I was so mad I passed out. I was like basically up and just bloop, out. And everyone got so scared. Like they'd never seen it before. I don't know. My wife was like, he's okay. He'll get back up in a second. And I got back up and everyone was like, oh, everyone was so nervous. I was like, oh, it happens. I was like, I'm fine.
It happens to the best of us.
But it depends on if you're on certain medications too.
Sure.
I'm on some medications that all of a sudden I noticed after I started taking them that like I black out really fast.
Yeah, folks on blood pressure medications, for instance, need to be careful because they tend to lower your blood pressure, and that can cause you to pass out.
Yeah, that's why I like to set my catches like perfectly in case I miss it. It hit the cat. But I only blacked out like that at the meet. Like I was out. In the gym, usually it's just like I kind of go black, but like I know where I am.
Right.
So you don't train in public gyms, but you still probably seen some stupid stuff in the gym. What's the dumbest thing you've seen in the gym, or you have done? Because I've done plenty of stupid stuff in the gym.
Yeah, I try to avoid the stupid stuff in the gym, but I've seen the squatting on a Swiss ball.
What's that?
Basically, where somebody puts a bar up on their back and then they climb up on those big Swiss balls and try to balance and do a squat at the same time.
Oh my God.
And, and I've seen folks do it on a Bozu ball, the half ball things too, the balance balls. And it's dangerous. And I learned very early on working with seniors that anything that challenges their balance is already dangerous. And so why make people do really stupid things when it really doesn't benefit them strength wise or function wise?
Yeah. I always like, I finished lifting and my head is, the blood's not in my brain anymore. And I'll just start taking plates off of one side of the bar. I'll do it all the time. The bar will go flying.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the one, that I've seen probably the most isn't necessarily stupid, but it's, the folks that will load up the bar for a squat and they'll do a 1/6 squat. I mean, they won't even do a quarter squat. They'll basically bend their hip and then put it back in, and or they're on the leg press and they're basically doing ankle presses. They're not even moving,
yeah.
moving their knees and the legs and
All those plies.
right.
Ballerina thing, a little plie.
Right.
Oh, in your training method, do you have a set number of reps that you do? Are you planning out exactly how many reps you're going to do, 3 for 5, or do you challenge yourself and do like as many reps?
I use them both. We just came through a cycle where we were doing AMRAP sets and trying to push ourselves to exhaustion on purpose. But I don't do that extensively.
Yeah.
Tend to have set reps, and really you got to focus what's your goal at that point. And right now without a meet, without preparing for a meet, my goal is more hypertrophy and overall fitness, and so my reps are higher than normal.
Well, it's high for a power lifter is like 5.
Oh, I'm in the 10 to 12 range.
That's like track running high.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing a combination right now this cycle. The 5-3-1, very low volume, but I've stretched it out for a year just to maintain strength on my squat, deadlift, and bench press.
Yeah.
And so those lifts are set reps, except for the last set. If I can, some days on the squat or the deadlift, there's no way I'm going to get more than the set amount. So I don't do as many as possible, but bench press I typically do. And then all the accessory work, I'm in the 10 to 12 range, and using a rep goal system with that, as far as adding weight and progressing with those.
Do you know who Pat Susko is?
Yes.
So I talked with him, and he's 69 now, and he trains a lot more volume now than he did when he was younger. He used to, he was, it's just a crazy huge squatter. He was just squatting, singles and stuff like that. And now after all his injuries and stuff, he can't handle that type of training anymore. So he's found that he's gone down. Basically, he's doing like sets 12 around there in the teens, and he says he's feeling strong. He's not getting injured, and he says he's having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine when I meet prepping. I'm 6 to 8 weeks for that, and then the meet. And usually by the end of the meet, my joints are really feeling it. And the first year I did meets, I did a couple back-to-back type meet things, which I don't recommend for anybody, where I would do, maybe 3 meets in a 6-week period or something like that. And that was just tough.
I would never do that.
And so I'm down to, if I'm going to do meets, I might do 2 a year. And those cycles where I'm either meet prep or really focused on the weight strength wise. I shorten the cycles. I make use of deloads, and mainly just because my connective tissue. I mean, as I'm getting older, I'm finding it's just harder on the joints uh, to do heavy weight every time I come in there
Yeah.
all the time, and so by changing things up, I've done better. I tried using some dupe daily undulating periodization for a while, and that was just hard on the joints. Even though I was changing the rep ranges, you keep the weights, you're using heavy weight, and for me, preparing for meets, it didn't work very well. A more linear progression for me works better, uh, and so I tend to stick with that. And so meet prep, I will move usually to a percentage base, just because I'm very goal oriented.
Yeah.
And so I'm visual, so it gives me the goal I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas last meet I tried to use more of a RPE method. Instead of having, this is the weight I'm going to do each day, I went into the gym and worked based on RPE. I liked it physically, personally, the feel of it, but I don't feel when I got to the meet, I lifted as strongly as I have in the past. I didn't hit the numbers I have in the past. And I think part of that is uh, because I didn't push myself in the same way, because it's easy for me to allow my brain to tell me that's a 9. That's a heavy 8, as
Yeah.
opposed to, this is the weight I'm set to do today. I've got to do this weight. I'm going to get at least 1 rep with this weight. And I do set that as my goal, whatever the weight is. I want to make sure I get at least 1. If I may not get the 3, I may not get the 5, but I'm going to get at least 1. And I do better with the set goals for me personally. But everybody's different, and like I said, the guys I'm working with right now, they're not. So
I was like, can you get them off the bus? Thank you. I tell my oldest daughter she gets here earlier. They have a half day today.
oh, good.
Get my other 2 off the bus. So have you ever bombed out of a meet?
No, simply because my bench press is so horrible that it is my stay in the meet lift. And the way I also approach things, my first lift, and for all the folks I coach, their first lift is always a lift they can do with their eyes closed in the gym.
I do. Well, you can get 5. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I just tell them, I said, you're not going for a record your first lift.
Yeah.
So first lift is one you could do with your eyes closed. You could do it any day of the week without any warm up. That's what your first lift is. Second lift, I want you to, I tell them, I want you to do whatever your best was the last meet we did, or whatever your gym best is. And then the third lift, you're going for a new PR. And that's worked well for us. And for me, so I've not bombed out of a meet. Now I have had a few 6 for 9 type meets, again, because bench press is my worst lift. I know I can get the first one usually with no problem. Second and third ones, typically, I mean, I've got 35-inch arms. I've got a long way I have to move the bar. It's great for the deadlift. It's horrible for the bench.
That's like Al Siegel had gorilla arms. It was crazy. He could touch his knees.
Yeah,
You ever meet Al Siegel?
I believe I've met him once. Yes.
His hands go down to his knee. Well, they did, but on his knees. It was really, really weird. But that's why he deadlifted a ton.
Yeah.
What's your stance on music and mirrors in gyms?
I don't have any mirrors. I've when I've traveled and visited folks and have gone to commercial gyms, they've had the mirrors, and it kind of freaks me out. one, I've got a radio face as it is, so I don't want to see myself in the mirror and give anybody else more opportunities to see me. uh, and then as far as music, I mean, I play music, but music has always been, whether it's in the gym or studying or whatever, it's for me, it's my means of focusing
Yeah.
because it gives me something. I block it out. It's there, but it forces me to focus on what I'm doing. You know, if I find myself singing while I'm lifting, then I'm not focused on the lift. And so it forces me to really focus on what I'm doing, and it's there to force me to focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The only everyone I talk to over 60 hates the music in the gyms and the mirrors. And anyone like under like 50 like has to have music and like they like the mirrors.
Well, I mean, it's got to be classic rock.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. I don't like to. I went to one gym and you know, they had a great setup, but they played this music where every other word was the F bomb, and it was loud, and it was a beat that was so contrary to what I was doing in the gym that it was just it was hard even to block it out and to really focus. And you know, I'm not into that. I like, I like my journey in Boston and you know, the classic 70s 80s stuff.
um in my opinion, I've gone to powerlifting competitions since 2001, and I've competed in other sports, but I feel that the athletes within powerlifting are very nice to each other, help
Mhm.
each other. It's one of the reasons why I really like competing in this sport, because as horrible as a powerlifter as I am, no one will ever, no one, no one comes up to me and says, "You are horrible. Why are you even here?" Everyone's like, "You did great. You tried so hard. Like it was great seeing you." I love this sport.
Yeah, I just everybody's been great. Um, you know, I tell the older folks when they come, I said, you need to come to at least one meet because you're going to leave with a bunch of friends you never knew you had, and lots of support. Uh, you know, you can, and I've noticed too, it's not so much that you get a lot of advice. I mean, the advice I've gotten has been when I've asked for advice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I've had folks coming up to me and saying, you know, you got to do this, this, and this, and this. Um, you know, usually if I'm given any advice, it's because hey, you saw me. Did I get depth, or did I do this, or what did I do wrong? You know, type
Yeah.
of stuff. And it's great to have that camaraderie and help.
So I know you're a pastor, not supposed to hate people, but how badly do you hate CrossFitters?
I don't hate CrossFitters. I actually about a year and a half ago, I was interviewing uh, for a position at another church, and one of the search committee folks couldn't be at the big meeting, and so they thought it would be neat if I went and worked out with them, since they knew I'd trained folks and I was a powerlifter, and so they took me to their gym, which was a CrossFit gym. And I was gasping for air after a few minutes. You know, I see how it's helped a lot of folks. I can see the positive of it, but I also
I think
I
the best benefit of CrossFit is that it's attracted a lot of people, and then they get injured eventually, and then they find powerlifting.
well, I've got three of my children are in the medical. Well, two of my children and one of my children-in-laws, my son-in-law, are all in the medical field, and they've said they have experienced more injuries. My son is a PA, but he's also an athletic trainer, and he said he's seen more injuries CrossFit related than powerlifting related.
The
Uh,
only injuries that I really see, like raw power, people that aren't using like suits and wraps and doing drugs, like the only injuries they get in the gym is because they like walk face first into the bar without looking. I mean, that's really the injuries that like I've
uh,
in the gym. mostly.
Yeah, I've seen the pop bicep or the torn pec. I didn't see it in person, but I watched the Brandon Lilly tearing his quad video. It's ghastly. Don't watch that video.
I don't watch that. I don't
But for the most part, my injuries have been few and far between. I had back surgery back in the 90s. So, people are amazed when they hear I deadlift at all, but I'm convinced that my deadlifting and my squatting has actually helped me not have any reoccurring problems with my back. After I was told, don't ever have the surgery because you're going to have problems the rest of your life, blah, 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 blah. My back is stronger now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced the squats and the deadlifts are the major part of that. And, I won't give them up. I'm hoping to hit 500 before I turn 60. So on my deadlift.
How old are you right now?
57.
And what's your max squat?
My best was 370.
Okay, well that's a lofty goal.
Well, the 500 is for my deadlift because that's my favorite lift.
What is your squat?
Yeah, my best deadlift is 470.
Oh, okay. And you want to deadlift 500 by the time?
Yeah, I'd like to get to 500 before I get to 60.
So you did 470, and you want to get to 500?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nothing.
No, that's not that far. Now I haven't done 470 in a couple years because it's, I actually haven't competed in a meet. I was supposed to compete last April in the Masters Nationals, and that got canceled.
Right, it'll come back. The 470 will come back real quick.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to work on that 500. But yeah, there should be no reason. That's definitely a realistic goal. Do you use creatine?
I do.
I do too. Yeah.
I do. Yep.
I found that it has it definitely adds to the force I can put on the bar. I find it helps me it gives me a little bit more force.
Yeah, well, I use it wishfully because I'm not sure. I wonder if I'm one of the non-responders because
you have to load properly.
Right.
Do you do the loading phase?
Well, I try to maintain the consistent. I did do loading early on when I first started using it.
Yeah.
And then as I've done, my research, I've found consistency is the better approach, and so I try to go the consistent model and
yeah. If you consistently use it over a long period of time, your body will eventually load up on it enough. But if you want to load up on it in the short term, like you have to do that loading phase. But
yeah.
I did the loading phase like real quick and noticed like an immediate difference, like in my power output. How much protein do you try and get in a day?
I am shooting for at least 200 grams a day.
That's good.
I'm usually between 175 and 200 grams each day.
Now, these are from the devil, but they work. Ammonia and smelling salts. Do you use them?
I do not. Nope.
They're from the devil, but they work.
Yeah, I have not. I would probably pass out using those because that's, there's some things, needles used to get me, and ammonia was one of those things. It sickens me. And so I've never had the desire to even use it.
Well, I would think with your lifting tradition, one of them would be praying, right, with your team. But
yeah.
Do you have any other traditions that you guys have?
Well, we have our shirts, our Dunamis powerlifting shirts that we all wear.
Yeah,
but not really. I'm not a back slapper or anything like that.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first times I met Gene Barry. I don't know if you've met Gene down in North Carolina. He was lifting off for me in a meet, and he has this habit, particularly with his brother, that he gives him a smack right on the chest before he lifts the bar off.
Yeah.
And so I asked him to help lift off for me, and I get on the bench, and he winds up and he whacks the crap out of me right before the lift. And so he lifts off, and at that point I can hardly breathe because he had smacked me. And I know he was trying to psych me up, but you know, I'm not the demonstrative. I've seen Ari and Naomi Cooten lift, and you know, and they yell and they scream, and I'm not that way. And because I'm not, I don't, you know, none of my lifters have been encouraged that way. You know, I do grunt
Well,
as I'm lifting, but I don't, you know, I'm not that before I get into the lift type of person.
there is science behind the grunting. If you look into it, the like there's something about like tightening up like your core, like your abs and grunting,
Right.
that like it is like dumping like adrenaline, and maybe it has to do with like I used to having to fight battles all the time or something like that. I don't know,
Right.
pre-fighting tradition or something that's ingrained in us. But like there is science not done on the grunting. Slapping yourself, I don't know, but I do it sometimes. Like today, today I did. I try not to be super. I used to be waste too much energy,
Right.
but now I've got, you know, I mean, I only slapped myself 4 times today. It wasn't that bad. Oh, chains and bands.
Uh, I've used some bands. I haven't really used chains. I've just I've used some bands both ways. I'm kind of like I know Mr. Cooten was talking about reverse banding,
Yeah.
and in the 10-20 life plan of Brian Carroll's, he makes heavy use of reverse bands uh, as a way of overloading.
Yeah.
You can overload the bar and then use the bands to help you, for instance, get up out of the hole.
Yeah.
I hadn't figured out in my garage how I can reverse band for deadlifts, so I haven't done it for deadlifts, but for bench
Did you watch
and
how
squat.
I use bands on the deadlifts without the rack. Have you ever seen me do it on Instagram?
Yeah, yeah, and I just recently reconfigured my my deadlift platform to where I've got some hooks to where I can attach the bands and use those. I just haven't done so yet.
Perfect. It I think it makes a huge difference. Like there's no way I would have got my lift today without it. I use the chains and the bands. I love them, and the benefit of having the chains is you look like a monster when you're doing them.
Yeah, they look neat. They
Yeah,
look neat.
it definitely look cool. You'd be the coolest pastor if you deadlift with chains.
I'll have to remember that. I'll put that on my list, my wish list on Amazon, so somebody can get me some chains. So.
Okay. That's all my lifting questions. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to know how um well basically your testimony.
Sure. Sure. Well, this is going to sound interesting. I was raised Catholic by my Jewish mother.
Catholic?
And
Jewish?
yeah, growing up. And we, we went to church. She married, my parents married before Vatican II. And so she was required to promise to raise us as good Catholic kids and raise us in the church. She did her best. And my dad was in the Navy, and we moved all around. When we were stationed here in Virginia Beach, actually, there was a falling out at the church, the chapel on campus, on base, excuse me, and they left the church, and I don't know that they had even been back to church other than for funerals until I became a pastor. And I didn't really know why, didn't know what had happened, why we had stopped going to church. in high school, I met some folks who said that they were Christians and that, but they were at all the same parties I was at. They were doing all the same things I was doing, so it didn't have that influence on me. When I got to college, came in contact with some folks that said they were Christians, and their lives were different. There was a peace about them, there was a strength about them, there was a grace about them that was different, and I wanted, but I wasn't sure about all of that. I met a girl there that I really wanted to get to know, but she wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. I did everything I could think of to try to impress her and get to know her. Nothing worked, so I finally resorted to begging. And her roommate was in almost all of my classes, so I begged her roommate to talk her into going. The school I was at, was the University of Montevallo, and we had what we called the Montevallo Walk, and that was our date. It was a small school in a small town, so there wasn't much else to do, and so it was a walk around campus, and so her roommate talked her into going on a walk with me around campus. And during the course of that night, she invited me to go to church with her the following Sunday. And so we went to this little teeny country Bible church, and it was there I heard a clear presentation of the gospel for the first time. The pastor's sermon was from Ephesians. The passage, be angry and sin not, don't let the sun go down upon your anger. And, I started thinking all these times I got angry, all the stupid things I did and how bad that was. And by the time the pastor got to the gospel presentation and a call, I was prepared and ready. I didn't go forward per se, but I just pray, Lord, everything I've heard is right and true. And if you are who you say you are, I pray that you would just enter in. And had this, I hate to say it, but I did. I just had this experience at that moment, right where I was, that my life was changed. And it did. I got involved with the campus ministry in which this young lady was in. I found out that same day that she was already engaged to somebody else, and I had no chance at all. But she got me involved in the campus ministry, and I was discipled and grew in the Lord, grew in my walk, and led into the ministry. It was while I was on that campus that I received a call to ministry that summer in Peru, and then a few years later ended up going to seminary and being called into the pastoral ministry. And I've been a pastor now since 1993, and have served churches in Alabama, New Orleans, Tennessee, and here in Virginia. I've been here for almost 15 years.
So how'd you wind up meeting your wife?
After I graduated, my degree was in psychology, and I wanted to find a job in my field, which is hard to do with a bachelor's of psychology. And so I went to work initially doing retail. I had 2 retail jobs, one in a magic shop during the day, and then at night I worked in a jewelry store. And those 2 taught me how to relate to and deal with people that believe totally different than me.
Yeah.
The magic shop, for instance, I worked with 3 folks, a dirty old man, a Mormon, and a witch. And they challenged my faith quite often. And then I went to the jewelry store at night. It was one of those big, they don't even have them anymore, kind of like Best Buy for jewelry type of stores. And it was all young folks like myself who were just looking for their next either drunk or sexual experience. And that taught me more about that. So I was there for about 6 months, and then found a job at the Presbyterian Home for Children in Talladega, Alabama. which was a home for most of the kids there were abused and neglected kids, or kids from low income families whose parents couldn't take care of them, and so they put them into the state system, and we were one of the houses for them. And I was the first male house parent for the teenage boys they'd ever had in their program, and my wife was working. She was with the youngest age kids across campus, and so we met at the children's home. Became the first couple to meet, get married, and have our first child while working at the children's home. And learned a lot about raising our first year of marriage. We had 10 teenage boys. So we learned a lot about parenting before we actually had to parent. And yeah, so that's how we met. We met at the children's home and have been together since 1986.
That's awesome. Well, I really hope to lift with you in a meet sometime in the future.
Right.
Or maybe one day we'll take a drive down there and train.
I was gonna say, come on down to Virginia Beach and meet with us. I'll get up there at some point. My son and his wife live in Astoria.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, we're only an hour away.
We haven't gotten up there since COVID. We were up there pre-COVID, and we try to get up there a couple times a year and just haven't been able to.
Well, the summertime is great. Orchards, and I have a boat on Greenwood Lake right here, a beautiful lake with mountains surrounding it and everything. We have a great time, and we'll squat, which is the best.
Okay. Well,
this was really awesome, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Well, appreciate talking with you.
Have a good day.
All right. May God bless.
Bye.
All right.